she's one of those when she's on screen that she kind of like steals it.
She takes over that scene, whatever scene she's in, man.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Matt with No Market Media.
And I'm Randall. Today, Matt and I are diving back into the world of Stranger Things. Now, previously, Stranger Things came out before we even started our channel, but hey, we're going to talk about Season 4, Volume 1 this time around. And it stars Millie Bobby Brown, Finn Wolfhard, Gaten Matarazzo, Caleb McLaughlin, Natalie Dyer, Charlie Heaton, Joe Keery, Noah Schnapp, Maya Hawke, Sadie Sink, Winona Ryder, and David Harbaugh. It also features Robert Englund, and it is also well publicized that the creators of this show are the Duffer Brothers.
Now, Season 4 of Stranger Things takes place 9 months after Season 3. A new threat, seemingly from the upside down, is killing teenagers in Hawkins, but our main group of characters are separated by hundreds of miles as Eleven struggles to fit in at a new school, all while being unable to use her powers. So far, it is well liked by both critics and audiences, and Volume 2 will be coming out in July.
So, first of all, I thought this season was it's very different from previous seasons. While it's still got the familiar feels of the characters interacting with each other, the characters being so far apart from each other is really interesting this season. The Byers move out to California with 11. Okay, well, that's a long ways away from Indiana. But then, you have Finn's character who goes and flies out to see, Elle out in California for spring break. And you have other characters, the Byers' mom, Joyce, who's going along with Murray, and they're going on this adventure, which is kind of sort of seen in trailers of, saving Hopper, and we know that he's over in Soviet Russia somewhere. This season has not just like upped the ante as far as like where everyone is, but like really moved them apart, because Strange Things has always been about those groupings, but they're like doing different things in Hawkins. They don't get very far apart. This season, everyone is everywhere.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the biggest changes that you'll see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's still, Stranger Things first and foremost has kind of like that 80s nostalgia, and I always go into a new season like, I wonder which 80s movies they're gonna, try to riff and stuff this time. And there's definitely new ones that they're pulling from. I mean, you can tell a lot of the different ones that they're pulling each for those different groupings. But the ones that we do have grouped together, even when they're like separate, the ones that are together, I think that's still like the strength of the season, and it still, it works well with how these characters interact and everything too. Now, not all the storylines and stuff really hit for me, but like I said, a lot of the relationships and stuff in this season still work, and I think that's what still makes this enjoyable for me to watch.
Yeah, it's still very, very character based. Very much these groups of people that we do have together, putting something entertaining on screen for everyone to watch, basically. So that still hits home.
So like I was saying, there are quite a few storylines going on in this one. I guess I tried to sum out, I would say maybe for me the main two, I would say is what's going on maybe in Hawkins with all like the deaths and stuff, and the kids that are still in Hawkins trying to figure that stuff out. And then the other part is, as we said, in California with Eleven and Will and stuff over there, and trying to go through Elle, like, finding out more about her past or whatever, reconnect to her past, and trying to find a way to get her powers back. I would say those are probably the two main storylines, and then we have, a whole bunch of other storylines intertwined or off to the side and other things too.
Yeah, so it's like, this is season 4. So we can tell storylines with our main characters, but we don't have to deal with like the character building of these characters. We've already done that.
You're right.
It's been 3 seasons of doing this, basically. So yeah, they do. They start telling other stories. And it's an interesting thing because sometimes the main cast stories are less interesting than some of the new characters that are brought in their stories. So when we get to characters, we'll probably talk about it, but there's a new character in this, who's like mostly shown through the veneer of L's flashbacks.
Yes.
And his story's really interesting, although I think if you're a fairly sharp-witted, viewer, you'll figure it out kind of quickly, like what's going on, but there are new characters and new storylines, not just the old characters and the old storylines driving the plot along.
Yep.
The only thing I'd say about the plot, about L's plot in particular, was, didn't we just do this in season 3? Like, yeah, I get it, this time it's a little different. She's lost her powers versus just finding a different way of becoming stronger, of using them more effectively. But it's kind of that same storyline that was in season 3 with her in the episode that no one really likes, basically, where it's just like, oh yeah, just use your anger or something to make your powers more strong. And it's like, well, you just need to go back and remember how to use your powers. That felt very familiar.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing too. We have that, like you were saying, like over and over in all the different seasons. So maybe it's just a thread that they just want to keep bringing up, I guess, in different ways. But as you mentioned, that is how we tie into one of those new characters where they're speaking to. So, and I think that was a pretty good addition, or how they kind of worked with that or whatever in the storyline. But yeah, I mean, I would say for me, one of the storylines that didn't work as much, we'll probably get into later, is probably like the harbor stuff or whatever. Even though I still really like the characters and everything, and the ways they interact are fun, the storyline as a separate thing, as a lot of times felt as more of a distraction sometimes than actually intertwined with like the rest of the season.
I'm glad Matt went there, because I was going to go there. Like, in a series that is completely done science fiction, unbelievable stuff's going on here. Telekinesis and telepathy, all of that stuff is part and parcel. The Upside Down, monsters from another dimension, all of that stuff is in Stranger Things. But there's always been like a grounding sense of the real world. Like, the real world still kind of works like you expect it to work. There's still the United States and there's still the Soviets, and there's still Ghostbusters and Star Wars and Dungeons and Dragons. Like, all of that real world stuff exists. And then you have this storyline with Hopper and Mrs. Byers, Joyce. And that feels completely unbelievable. They're gonna go get him from the Soviet Union. She survives a plane crash, which is already very unbelievable by normal world standards. And then she breaks into a maximum security Soviet prison. I just felt like you took some of the stuff that made the real world feel grounded and said, you know what, we're just gonna Stranger Things the real world too at this point. And maybe by season 4 you just don't care, but felt a little strange.
Yep. I think it's one of those two where I mentioned like which 80s movies they're gonna do, or 80s genre, and this was their idea, is like, you know what, let's try a different one. Let's try kind of like the escape, or what you call it, genre out of.
Well, they even mention it. They're like, They make a reference to The Great Escape, I'm like, oh, okay. That's not even science fiction. It's not even 80s, but So the characters at this time around, they're all already so well defined. It's not like it's a movie where you're just waiting for characters to develop. They're already there. So you kind of put new characters in.
Yep.
For the most part. And their characters are interesting. So you have the new character Eddie, who's like basically a loser, He's on his third try of his senior year in high school, and he's perfectly happy and content to be there. He's the pothead,
He's like the leader of the losers.
He's the leader of the losers club. Well, they don't have to fight clowns though. And obviously he's grouped with a lot of the characters that we've previously known, because they're the geeks, basically. You have a new jock to take the place of Billy, and really, I guess you'd say at this time that like Steve's not really like the high school jock anymore. He's a couple years out of high school and he's maturing a little bit, basically. So you have to have this high school jock. So there's one of those in.
Yep.
You got a new Russian or Soviet, that takes the place of the Slurpee guy, basically. So there's lots of new characters. going on here, and for the most part, they're kind of entertaining. They're interesting characters. And of course, you have the new baddie Vecna.
Yep.
And his story unfolds, and it all ends up making sense with the main stories.
Yep.
So I really did like all of the additional characters, as well as feeling comfortable with our, legacy characters.
Yeah, the legacy characters still hit this story, pretty good, or this show. I really think that is the strength of this. The different relationships we have. I mean, I love Steve. Like, Steve's probably my favorite. And I love all the different, like, team-ups, like Steve, whether, it's with, Gatton's character and stuff, when they're together, or when it's, Maya Hawke, Robin with Steve. And I like that we take someone that some characters that we introduced in the last season, and we do give them a little bit more, I think, in this season. I think Robin, we get a bit more with her, other than just being, like, a friend of, like, Steve's. We actually see her do more in this season. Also, like, Erica, too. Erica was a new one that we had last one, and she's one of those, when she's on screen, that she kind of, like, steals it.
She takes over that scene, whatever scene she's in, man.
Yeah. So I like that. That sounds good. And like we were talking about our villain, I really Vecna, I think, feels familiar to, like, 80s, like, horror. I would say some specific, like, 80s horror
or something like that.
Yep.
There's good character growth for a lot of our, like, existing legacy characters. There's a lot going on with Max, basically, in this, and as the main characters get more and more into high school, there's, them maybe breaking up their clique because someone's like, I'm tired of being, the outcast. I'm tired of being the nerd, basically.
Yep.
And, that causes friction between our main characters. You'd mentioned, Robin, so Maya Hawke's character. They give her lots, instead of just being, like, the awkward teen who is kind of forced to work with this ex-jock high schooler. They have a real legitimate friendship, and you get to see, like, a lot more of her awkwardness. Like, why is she so awkward? Oh, because she can't shut up. She's just gotta keep going. You know? So there's a lot of really good stuff going on here. And I guess for the adult characters.
Yeah.
Paul Reiser comes back to this, and we mentioned Robert Englund is in it for a little bit, kind of doing a weird, creepy horror, body horror thing.
Yeah.
Very Robert Englund, you know?
General genre, I would just say it's like 80s nostalgia, kind of. I think this show really takes a lot of different ones. The main one, I guess, would kind of say it's kind of like sci-fi, and then maybe like kids' adventure. I get a lot of Goonies or whatever feels watching, like, Stranger Things, but also a lot of, like, the horror elements, intertwined with our sci-fi and stuff. But as we mentioned too, like, something kind of new, like the prison escape thing, that kind of adds, I think, kind of like a newer genre and stuff to it. So I would say overall, generally, I would just say, like, 80s nostalgia genre. We're gonna pick and pull from different movies.
I'd say this one is less 80s nostalgia than the previous 3 seasons were. The previous 3 seasons, like, picked a nostalgic thing, and they're like, we're gonna go with that.
Yeah.
Like, hold on.
Yeah.
The only thing that they really pick out of the 80s that, like, just screamed to me, I don't even know if it was, like, strictly speaking 80s, it might have been early 90s, was the D&D, like, oh, it's the devil kind of thing. That's the strongest, like, real world thing that they picked up this season. Not like the mall, where it was like, oh my god, it's a mall, because malls are dying now. I still feel the sci-fi. I still feel like the horror aspects, although they're supposed to be high schoolers, so, like, I don't know how hard they want to push that horror, but there's some pretty graphic stuff, especially early on, especially with some kids too. So, like, there's some body horror in it. It's still walking that fine line behind just being a sci-fi show, though. Like, psychological sci-fi show. And I'm okay with it. I'm here for it.
I think it was interesting. One of the things that we start off with like, 11 writing her note to, like, Mike, and they're showing all, like, the high school stuff.
Oh,
I got real, like, and I don't want to say quite, but almost like Breakfast Club or other different movies like that kind of vibes or whatever to start this
chick
series.
Flick.
Kind of interesting.
Yeah, little chick flicky. Yeah. On purpose, I think.
On purpose.
One of the things I didn't see coming was that I wouldn't really enjoy the like Hopper storyline.
Mm-hmm.
It's not his storyline in particular, and really it's not David Harbour's fault. Like, the way he portrays the character is still excellent. I just found that whole thing so unbelievable. Like, oh, okay, we're just gonna sneak into the USSR. How hard could it be? You know, like, I don't know. I thought there's probably a better way of doing this, but it just felt like we just need something for these characters to do.
Mm-hmm.
It almost makes me think they should have just let them die.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, then we could get on with the main characters and the main story, because the characters, you know, Joyce and him, what they're doing, they're not really doing that much for the main story right now, at least that we can tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of it is to pull like Joyce away from like the kids in Hawkins to kind of put her in a different setting for this one. And yeah, I would say a lot of it is kind of a different tonal feel than some of the other things that are going on, especially when we have Harper like doing the stuff to try to escape or whatever. That stuff is kind of interesting. I would say of all like the horror and stuff too, the parts that made me shiver the most is some of the things that Harper has to do while trying to escape. Actually probably made me shiver the most in this movie for like graphic, like, ouch, you know, I'm watching this and I'm feeling hurt while watching this.
Don't worry, guys. He'll put a little asterisk up and he'll say Hopper.
Yeah.
Where he says Harper.
Yeah, Harper,
but
exactly.
He'll fix it.
Yeah.
He'll fix it in post.
Well, what I didn't see coming, it was something that you were talking about before. I guess I didn't really expect to see the Nancy and the Robin dynamic in this one. But I like it too, because that's where we get to see all those personality, you know, quirks and stuff for Robin. And that's why I was kind of mentioning too, like, hey, that's a character that I think, even though she was already established, she isn't just, you know, like Steve's friend in this season. You know, we get that more of like her character on her own a bit more with the Nancy team up. So I guess that was something I wasn't really expecting, was those two going off and doing their Silence of the Lambs bit or whatever in this one.
Stranger Things in general has been a lot about duos and putting the right characters together. It almost feels like classic Star Trek, like old Next Generation stuff like that, where it's like, all right, what would happen if we put this character with this character? Let's write a script around that, you know? Where it was like, or O'Brien and Julian Bashir, where it's like, man, these characters are going to start out hating each other, but just wait. Pretty soon they're going to be best friends, you know? That's what I got a feeling from this one. They started playing around a little bit with, like, who wants to be with who and who's willing to go and pair off with who, right. Basically. What can we do differently? So in this one, you know, Finn Wolfhard's character, he spends an awful lot of time with, he's with Will Byers a lot, but also Will's older brother.
Yes.
And they're kind of all together way more than they've ever been in any of the previous seasons. So they play with the character dynamics a lot more. Yeah, that's right. I found a way to put Star Trek in this.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, go watch Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 2, because if you liked all of Stranger Things, you're going to like this one. You know, it's enough freshness. There's enough new stuff going on. It keeps the series alive, basically. I swear to God, like, they had said they were going to... This was it. This was Season 4 was it. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, no, there's going to be a Season 5. And I'm like, what? That's not what you guys were saying. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I see why there is now. Because... we barely even touched on the Mind Flayer, you know, and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I have really enjoyed Season 4, Volume 1 so far, and I'm excited to see what it comes in store with Volume 2 in this one, too. It is because all the, you know, the characters are still enjoyable to watch. This is such a bingeable show. I mean, I think a lot of the other shows that we've been watching recently is kind of more like, you know, episodes coming out. And I think it actually helped a little bit because I had time to, like, digest, like, each episode. Stranger Things is still one of those bingeable shows where you do just want to see the next one, the next one, the next one. I don't think you really need each episode to really, like, sink, you know, your head around, you know, sit with and stuff, too. So, yeah, I still kind of like that kind of stuff where
Maybe. I don't know. You know,
You'd like them spread out a bit?
Well, no, I don't. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. But at the same time, like, it would work.
Mm-hmm.
Because imagine the water cooler talk. Imagine, like if you had to wait a week to see what happens with Max.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Imagine that. Basically.
I'd be upset.
Yeah, but you'd be like, oh my god, I can't believe they're going to leave me hanging till next week like you did with Game of Thrones back when it was good.
That's
you know?
exactly what I was thinking of too, the old Game of Thrones.
Like, there's power in making people wait for something, you know? But yeah, at the same time, I wouldn't have been happy about it. I mean, the fact that they even split it into 2 volumes is new.
Yep.
You're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and that the last episodes are going to be like an hour and a half and 2.5 hours.
Actually, these episodes were all pretty long, like an hour plus every episode.
Yep.
Super happy. Keep doing that, Netflix.
Well, Randall and I, we want to know what you guys think about Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1. Let us know in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some of our other reviews on our YouTube page. We take a look at other TV shows. We have new movie reviews, flashback movie reviews, and we also have some deeper dive discussions.
You can always go check us out over on Facebook if you haven't already. We post there what we're working on for our, upcoming videos. We also post some things from other fandoms and whatnot. But if you don't want to go over to Facebook, that's fine. Just check us out on YouTube. We're posting new content regularly. For now, I am Randy with No Market Media, and I'll see everyone next time.
And I'm Matt. Have a good day, everyone. Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.